New data from Harvard's Joint Center on Housing Studies documents the widening gap nationwide between the supply of housing and the need for housing, especially affordable and low-income housing. Nowhere is this more acute than in California.
The first trend is the eviction moratorium, both the federal and the state moratorium. So, the second trend is going to focus mostly on equitable development. And then the last trend, which tends to get lost in the shuffle, is legal services for those who need them, particularly in rural counties. But California has a stronger moratorium than the federal one. Right now, there is no deal just yet. And right now, the eviction moratorium is set to expire on June 30th. And that is a problem because thousands of renters can be thrust into homelessness, which we are trying to avoid. There has been concern that the money has not gone out in fast enough quantities. Currently, California has $5.2 billion to spend on rental forgiveness. And we've heard that not a lot of that funding has gone out. So that we're hoping within the next few months, by working with advocates across the state and HCD, as well as education programs, particularly targeting areas in rural counties where there is a digital divide, where there is language access issues, that within the next couple of weeks and months, there will be an uptick in rental forgiveness going out to those areas.
Just to highlight, who are the renters in California? So who are the people who are going to be affected if the eviction moratorium expires? And if you look at the data on who the renters are in California, you notice a couple of key trends. So Californian households, Californians with low incomes are especially likely to be renters. So about 2/3 of Californians who have incomes below 200% of the poverty line are renters. Another key trend is that so there are a number of racial and ethnic groups that are more likely to be living in rental housing. So in particular, Black and Pacific Islander and Latinx or Latino Californians are especially likely to be living in renter households. To think about which California renters were already paying more than they could afford for rent before COVID hit, right? So we know that there was a housing affordability crisis before the COVID-19 pandemic. And if you look at the data on which renters were paying an unaffordable amount towards housing even before COVID, again, you see differences. You know, this is not spread equally across all Californians, right? In terms of the burden of the housing affordability crisis.
Around 700,000 households, which comes out to be around 1 million Californians in California are currently behind on their rent. And then, you know, just 8 in 10 renters are behind on their rent, lost employment during the pandemic. The study was of tenant supporting organizations, some of which are coalition partners, but not all of them. In general, we found that eviction protections and the relief, like the rental assistance, it does help promote health and well-being as well as it's saving lives. But only if people can access that support. Two, that some landlords are continuing to evict tenants even despite the moratorium and the rent relief. Housing is health. Housing is a public health issue. This is something that is pretty well established, but I don't think in our general community, everybody understands this yet. There are some of the impacts that we saw during this time because of the COVID housing instability or the lack of access to the rent relief. People should know that our organizations indicated that their clients, their members were having mental health concerns.
And so the homeless population in Chico was growing pretty quickly, I think around 2015. And then in 2018, we were hit with the Camp Fire, which destroyed the town of Paradise, and that's 12 miles from Chico. So that destroyed our areas, a lot of our areas' affordable housing stock. And I think, that's true throughout California, that a lot of times people live in fire-prone areas because it's where affordable housing is.
And roughly 100 people died. They put a smaller number, but there was homeless and other people that weren't counted. And I believe there's bodies out there that'll someday be discovered. But the fire happened on November 8th of 2018. And I'm in Magalia. In fact, I'm in an RV right now that I'm being evicted of as of today, but I'm sitting 2 blocks from where my house burned down. And Magalia is just right above Paradise. As Leslie mentioned, the fire displaced some 50,000 of my closest friends. It resulted in the loss of some 15,000 homes. And if you just flip that and say, hey, if we all got together and we came up with a great housing solution, how to create more housing, and we came up with a plan that could create 15,000 homes, we'd be so excited about that. But in one moment, 15,000 homes were lost.